Live in Western Oregon, this is NBC 16 News at 5:30.
We're following the aftermath of the weekend riots, those responsible leaving behind property damage and vandalism in downtown Eugene. This morning, Eugene Mayor Lucy Vinnis, Police Chief Chris Skinner, and City Councilor Greg Evans addressed the violence. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Jacqueline Mazer. Now, officials say the riots will not be tolerated. Our reporter Lauren Negretti has been following this story since the weekend. She joins us live in the studio tonight. Now, Lauren, did city leaders give any reason as to why peaceful protests are turning violent?
Well, Jacqueline, officials say about 75 to 100 people broke off from the original Black Lives Matter movement group. The riot left behind a string of vandalism, including broken windows and graffiti with anti-police messaging.
These violent actions are unacceptable and unworthy.
Mayor Lucy Vinnis says their work to address police reform and systemic racism will not be deterred. And Councilor Greg Evans says they are only supportive of peaceful protests. Cleanup continued Monday after Saturday night rioters damaged downtown property. Sunday also had tense moments, including a man who pulled out a gun, later arrested.
We learned a lot from the way we deployed in the early stages of this.
He says over time they've identified successful riot control tactics and made progress.
Last night there was a moment where protesters and police came together in the middle and had productive dialogue.
And
we're not entertaining a curfew into the future. That's our way of extending that level of trust, saying we think you can self-manage, you can be heard, we'll create the space for you to be heard.
The arrest tactics were called into question over a viral video of a minor being restrained.
The female was identified as an agitator after she threw rocks at a police car and dragged paper boxes into the street to block our ability to drive down the street.
Police say she was cited for criminal mischief and released to her parents.
Generally, it's 2 to take somebody into custody, and then in that environment, a person kind of watching to see if anybody's going to intervene.
Skinner says 2 federal officers were inside the U.S. courthouse with no deployment strategy. In the efforts for local police reform, Evans says City Council has formed an ad hoc committee predominantly made up of people of color.
That is going to be looking at policies, procedures, tactics of the police force, and reviewing that
to ensure there's equity in Eugene. And Eugene Police says they had intelligence of out-of-town involvement in the protest this weekend, but Chief Skinner confirmed the individuals arrested Saturday were locals. He's not sure if out-of-town groups actually materialized, but says that is concerning.
Do you think the presence of federal officers has helped de-escalate tensions here?
Well, it's clear that when they first arrived, that it did increase the passion of those people who came to protest.
Right now, Homeland Security is reportedly considering sending another 150 federal agents to Portland. The Associated Press says an unnamed official confirmed to them 50 Customs and Border Protection agents could be headed there, while the Washington Post is reporting 100 Deputy U.S. Marshals might be on their way. Portland police say a group of several hundred people gathered downtown last night and into the early morning hours. Police say some of those people threw fireworks over the fence surrounding the federal courthouse, tried to jump over it or cut through it. Eventually, federal officers cleared the crowd. Portland police say they did not help with those efforts. Portland police did, however, find a backpack with rifle magazines and Molotov cocktails inside. They say someone pointed out the bag to them near Lonsdale Square. Police didn't find the owner of that bag nor make any arrests in connection. A Portland police investigation continues for a shooting that left one person hurt and 2 others arrested. It happened last night near the protests outside the federal courthouse. It's still unclear if the shooting was connected to the protests. A witness says a few people with guns started fighting, and that's when one of the guns went off. Police say the person who was injured is expected to survive. Well, the Seattle Police Department released new body cam footage after another weekend of clashes between officers and protesters. Dozens of officers were hurt in what police are calling a riot. Buildings are damaged and burned. We're going to take a look at this video that shows what police say protesters are throwing things at officers, as you can see. Now, SBD says 59 of their officers were hurt, mostly burns from fireworks or other types of explosives. Windows and walls at the East Precinct on Capitol Hill blown out with explosives strong enough to pierce through the insulation and sheetrock. 47 people are arrested and face charges for failing to disperse, assault, and obstruction.
Well, good evening. Hopefully you are indoors with some air conditioning because that heat advisory is still in effect. It's not until 9 o'clock tonight will it really start to cool down and move out of our way. But we also have this fire weather warning heading into tomorrow by 4 p.m. into 10 o'clock at night. So it's going to be warm. We do have that high pressure system in the area. That green is not much moisture. We do have some dry lightning east of the Cascades, not affecting those down in the Umpqua Valley yet, but we do have the potential to do so with this warmer weather. Now, taking a look at yesterday's daytime highs and today's, we're still going to decrease our humidity levels, which means we are increasing our fire potentials, especially for those in Douglas and the Umpqua Valley compared to Linden Lane. Now today, another warm day. Hopefully make use of those kiddie pools and air conditionings. 93 for Eugene. A little bit warmer down in the Umpqua Valley and 60s for those out in the coast. Will remain dry and warm, but we do have a brief respite. I'll have all those details in my full weather forecast. Jacqueline?
All right, Heather, sounds good. Thank you. Well, parents and teachers went to the state capitol, today to push the governor to make a decision about the upcoming school year. Teachers recently formed the Oregon Safe Return to Schools group. About 9,000 people joined on Facebook. Organizers are demanding a singular new requirement on their own before they agree to school reopenings. They don't want students and staff to return to buildings unless new COVID-19 cases stop for 14 days.
We're here to try to encourage the decision makers to make the right call. We want to have distance learning until there is no COVID threat.
The Oregon Department of Education and the Oregon Health Authority created safety guidelines for schools. Districts must submit their plans for review in mid-August. The school systems need to prepare for 3 scenarios: in-person education, distance learning, or a hybrid model. Let's take a quick look at the latest pandemic numbers reported in Oregon today. There are 340 new confirmed and presumptive cases, and thankfully no new deaths today. Oregon surpassed the 17,000 mark in cases and currently has 289 deaths. Well, if the next stimulus bill becomes law, you could be getting another check in the mail from the U.S. government, up to $1,200 depending on your income level. Within the last few hours, Senate Republicans released the HEALS Act. Now it has plenty of party line battles to overcome. Chief Political Correspondent Scott Thuman looks at what's being debated.
That was less painful than the blood draw.
Just as the first patient to get a phase 3 trial vaccine for the virus is hoping to find solutions, so are members of Congress working on a phase 4 stimulus. But the Republican Senate proposal, already behind schedule, will be heavily challenged. Expect a passionate fight over how much additional money should be given weekly to the tens of millions of Americans currently on unemployment.
With respect to the formula we're proposing, which is a 70% cap on all wages, I think we can work that out, and I think we can work it out quickly. We don't want to create disincentives to work.
I can't see just letting 25 million Americans lose everything that they have, even if it might not be what I would like to see. I'm open to some sort of compromise. It's important.
Both sides also to spar over funding for schools, financial assistance for states, hospitals, small businesses, and legal protections against coronavirus lawsuits.
We cannot afford to wait. This is the greatest economic crisis in 75 years since the Great Depression. And our Republican friends have been dithering, twiddling their thumbs.
Possibly complicating matters more, some Democrats want to add restrictions on the president's use of federal agents in cities seeing tense protests, forcing them to identify who they are on uniforms and vehicles, and limiting where they can operate without permission from local governments. Although all sides acknowledging it is highly unlikely this bill would ever pass the Senate, instead they say it is a base for negotiations, and the two sides very far apart, Democrats wanting closer, reportedly, to $4 trillion in aid, while Republicans asking for something nearer to $1 trillion. On Capitol Hill, I'm Scott Thuman.
The West Eugene Hynix plant could return to life next summer with 100 new jobs. Tom Adams says an Ohio-based high-tech firm is investing millions of dollars to upgrade the facility. He joins us live in the studio with an update tonight. Tom.
Well, hi, Jacqueline. Stratacache is a privately held company based in Ohio that makes video displays and digital signage. It paid just over $6 million last spring in an auction to buy the old Hynix chip-making facility. The plant has been closed since 2008 when the the old company laid off 1,100 workers. StrataCash CEO Chris Riegel says they're excited to be expanding to the Oregon area and says the pristine condition of the Hynix facility was a huge deal maker.
It's just an amazing capability for the process that we're putting into that factory. Those types of facilities, being a Class 1 clean room, are incredibly expensive to build.
We know that they plan to bring about 100 new jobs to the region in 2021. And after that, they expect to bring in hundreds more jobs over 2022 and 2023.
And Chris Riegel told me today the hiring of employees could possibly start in the first quarter of next year, 2021. In the meantime, StrataCash will work on mechanical upgrades to the Hynix plant and re-roof the production area here in the coming months. Jacqueline?
All right, thanks, Tom. New jobs, always a good thing. Appreciate the report tonight. Well, coming up in your only local news at 5:30, data scientists from 3 Oregon universities received a National Science Foundation grant. What environmental challenges across the Pacific Northwest they plan to focus on. And when we're not on air, we continue to bring you the latest developments on our website, NBC16.com, and on our Facebook page at KMTR News. You can also download our KMTR News app on your phone for free. We'll be back.